Hey everyone, welcome back. Today's video dives into one of the eeriest and most elusive mysteries in the SCP universe, SCP-64462, also known as the Implicit Door. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you know the SCP Foundation has dealt with some absolutely godlike beings, many of them powerful enough to snap reality in half like a toothpick. Some of these threats are locked up nice and tight. Others, well, they're kept out through sheer luck or complex rituals. But today's subject is linked to one of the most legendary dangers of them all, the Scarlet King. Now, we're not going to do a deep dive into the whole Scarlet King lore here. It's a rabbit hole in its own right. But I do have a video all about him if you want a deeper understanding. That said, you don't need to be an expert to follow along. Just know this, the Scarlet King is bad news. He's been a looming threat forever, always hovering at the edge of our reality, clawing at the veil, trying to break through. And he's not alone. He has 7 brides, each of them incredibly powerful in their own way, and their children. Yeah, each one could casually wipe out humanity without breaking a sweat. SCP-6462 focuses on one of these brides. She's not exactly sitting pretty locked away in a prison, so obscure, it might as well not exist. And the Foundation. They'd really prefer it stayed that way. But as you can probably guess, things don't go according to plan. All right, let's break this down. SCP-6462 exists inside a pocket reality, kind of like its own mini-universe, tucked away in a place called Relic Universe 7V Omega. This was thought to be uninhabitable after a little thing called the Third Crimson Crusade. That war was one of the first known cross-universe conflicts, and it left the place supposedly uninhabitable. But as it turns out, 7V Omega still has some strange secrets tucked inside. This pocket reality is completely hidden on every known multiverse map. It just shows up as a blank dead zone, like it's not even there. So how do you find a place that doesn't want to be found? Well, first you have to detect something called 6462A, which is a weird form of radiation that drifts between universes. Then you have to trace that radiation back to where it came from. Finally, you have to use something called a Scranton-Meyerbeer arc to jump into the origin point. Not exactly a walk in the park, right? This whole thing started with the Trifrost Initiative, a Foundation project trying to develop a safe, non-anomalous way to travel between universes. That's when they stumbled onto 6462A. It seemed harmless, at first just another flavor of cosmic weirdness, but after some tests, things got a lot creepier. The early tests involved exposing live subjects to the radiation. For example, Test 46 was done on 3 chickens. 2 of them developed teeth-like growths inside their stomach linings. The third chicken. At first glance, it looked totally normal, but when researchers dug a little deeper, they discovered something shocking. Its stomach was entirely made of human ovarian tissue. Even worse, that tissue was a perfect genetic match for SCP-2315, one of the human sacrifices rescued from a cult known as the Children of the Scarlet King. From there, things only escalated. Test 57 exposed 15 D-Class personnel to the radiation, and over the next month, most of them reported disturbing, often surreal dreams. Many of those dreams mirrored imagery from the Children of the Scarlet King's religious texts, not exactly the kind of dreams you want to have. One subject dreamt of being in a pitch-black cave that was also somehow a river. They had a rope tied around their waist, leading back to the surface, and sometimes they felt breath on their neck, followed by what felt like bites. They'd panic and run only to forget the rope and have to turn back. When they finally made it out, they realized the rope was actually their intestines tied to a tree. Another dreamed they were heading to a party with their sisters, all wearing long gowns and metal bracelets, but they never reached the party. It was like being trapped in a permanent prelude. One more described a ritual scene, men in robes a girl on a stone slab. Instead of being horrified, he said he actually wanted to hurt her. He even admitted that the desire hadn't gone away. Not surprisingly, he was given Class C amnestics immediately. Some dream reports were even more chilling. One D-class just muttered the word red. No elaboration. Another described how she couldn't remember her father's face anymore. He died when she was 9. She said he came to visit her last night, stepping through the red of the howling moon's eye. But his face was wrong, like it wasn't on quite right. Then she started bleeding from her nose, said he's here, and immediately suffered a massive heart attack. Yeah, that's the kind of reality-warping horror we're dealing with. Now let's talk about the place itself, the reality of SCP-6462. There's no day or night there. It's just stuck in this eerie, perpetual twilight. The only light comes from a sun-like star that never really rises or sets. There's no animal life at all, just bacteria. Even human muscle mass atrophies faster there, though it can be slowed with exercise and a protein-rich diet. Most of the landscape is flat and featureless, dotted with random rock formations, except for one place, 6462B. 6462B is a massive 2,500 square kilometer city, sitting smack in the middle of the dimension. The architecture looks a lot like pre-Renaissance Davite designs. Davites being another ancient and terrifying civilization in the SCP mythos. But here's the thing. There's no sign that anyone ever lived in this city. Nearly every building is hollow and fragile, crumbling at the lightest touch. Texts, carvings, anything that might give us answers, mostly eroded into dust. But the city isn't empty. It's inhabited by shadowy humanoid entities, dense dark shapes that vanish the moment you look at them directly. They're only seen out of the corner of your eye or heard as uncertain whispers. And get this, if a camera is placed within 52 meters of one of these entities, it may start showing images of beings that aren't even there. Up to 44% of those images are considered false positives. These shadow creatures are hostile, but not openly confrontational. They don't charge at you. Instead, they stalk, they ambush, they isolate. However, they avoid one specific building, the central hall of a palace near the city's core. For whatever reason, they can't or won't enter that place, so the Foundation used it as their central base. Before that was established, though, Mobile Task Force Aleph 7 tried to make a safe zone elsewhere. That's when Agent Gabriel Dubois got separated from his team during an ambush. His comms and body cam were damaged, but the body cam kept broadcasting for 45 more minutes. What it showed was terrifying. He believed he was inside some kind of hospital, barricaded in a third-floor room. He could hear the whispering voices just outside, urging him to open the door, but there were no windows to escape through, and the furniture was way too brittle to hold back anything powerful. Then a voice told him he was thinking of the wrong door. Dubois turned, yelled, and the feed cut out. His body has never been found. And that's just scratching the surface of what's inside the palace at the center of SCP-6462. All right, let's get back into it. So we've got this eerie, shadow-stalked city in a dead universe, and at its center is a strange palace that doesn't play by normal rules. The Foundation discovered that this palace isn't just some architectural curiosity, it's a spatial anomaly. The inside layout doesn't make logical sense. Walk through one doorway and you could end up somewhere totally random. Not ideal for your average explorer, but for something ancient and dangerous. Perfect place to hide secrets. Now here's the catch. Once you pass through 7 doors inside the palace, you're automatically rerouted back to the central hall every time, no matter which rooms you were going through. That rule only doesn't apply to 2 specific doorways, the main entrance to the palace and the one that leads to the throne room. As of now, the Foundation has mapped out 306 distinct rooms within the palace. Some are mundane, others deeply disturbing. Let's go over a few of the more memorable ones. First, there's a conservatory filled with dead plant matter, everything from rotting vines to gold-colored leaves. Some of these leaves resemble those from an ancient apple tree variety called Ithen, which is tied to Norse mythology. In those myths, Ithen was the goddess who tended the golden apples that granted immortality to the gods. Pretty on the nose, right? Next, we've got the armory. Inside the Foundation, found weapons and objects that were so advanced or so dangerous that nearly half were used to build something called the on-site Surtiar-class warhead. Another chunk was sent to hazardous material storage, and the rest left alone. Too risky to move. That's the level of stuff we're dealing with here. Then there's the library. Almost all the books are either destroyed or so degraded they're unreadable, but 4 intact texts were discovered. One of them matches descriptions of SCP-6262, a massive religious rite that links together the beliefs of Sarkicism, the Church of the Broken God, and you guessed it, the Children of the Scarlet King. The other 3 are still being translated, and the implications are chilling. There's also a room nicknamed the Bloodletting Chamber. Here the door automatically seals itself shut until a stone bowl in the center is filled with 2 liters of blood. Real subtle. Another room has a tar-like substance coating the floor, and loud knocking echoes from inside one wall. That's a clear nod to SCP-6261, an entity that secretes black tar and is terrified of the number 7 and the color red. Room 238 is classified as a birthing room, but we don't get much detail beyond that because whatever cognitive hazard was inside the description got expunged. Sounds like someone didn't want to take any chances. Room 253, on the other hand, is an ocean chamber. That room contains a massive body of water that somehow exceeds the size of the entire palace. Foundation teams found fossilized remains in the water, something that looks very close to a sperm whale, but not quite. This connects back to a kind of in-joke/theory that the Scarlet King and his children are all metaphorical whales. And then we get to the centerpiece, SCP-6462-C. This is where things get serious. SCP-6462-C is a stone casket hovering above a massive throne in the palace's throne room. It's huge, about 3 meters wide, 5 meters long, and 2 meters deep. It's suspended in midair by 7 silver chains, each one connected to either the north or south wall. There's even a 4th loop on the south wall, but no 8th chain. No one knows why. The casket emits a terrifying effect. Any organic matter or liquid that comes near it starts drying out fast. The closer you are, the faster the effect kicks in. At its worst, the desiccation zone can stretch over 2 kilometers. When the first team tried to approach it, 3 members got caught in that field. They were completely dried out like human raisins in under 3 seconds. Just gone. Now etched onto the lid of this casket is a symbol. It's a Davite glyph that translates to words like hunger, thirst, longing, or emptiness. That symbol has shown up before in Foundation records, particularly in a tale called Dust and Blood. That story is tied to the Scarlet King and his 7 brides. And yes, this casket is believed to contain one of those brides, specifically the 5th bride, Anut. According to legend, Anut was strong in mind, but frail in body. Her children were masters of the hidden arts, sorcery, deception, ruin. Because of that power, the Scarlet King crippled them to prevent any rebellion. Her seal, the one etched into the casket, means lacking. Her spirit is restless. Her hunger will never be satisfied. Her thirst never quenched. Naturally, the file says in bold letters, do not interact with the casket, ever. But this being the SCP Foundation, someone did. That someone was 0511, one of the top brass. They sent an email to the rest of the council suggesting that maybe, just maybe, they should lift the communication ban and actually talk to Anut. Their argument, yeah, she's dangerous, but so is the Scarlet King, and they're running out of options. He's been destroying universe after universe, and Anut might be their only shot at understanding his next move. It's a risky gamble. As 0511 put it, This world will die in the dark so that all worlds may live in the light. The council votes. It's a close call, but the motion passes. And that's when Dr. Anvi Madras is brought in to conduct the interviews. Madras begins cautiously. Anut's voice is quiet, hoarse, like she hasn't spoken in a long time. She asks if Madras is a scholar. Madras says she's a researcher. That's enough. Anut seems pleased to speak with someone who values knowledge. She warns Madras that her mind is foggy, slowed by centuries of silence. It'll take time before her thoughts become clear again. But she agrees to share what she can. Madras starts simple. Do you know where you are right now? Anut pauses, then says she believes she's entombed in the throne room of her firstborn son, a twisted joke from her husband, the Scarlet King. Her son was loyal to a fault, probably got himself killed in her name the day she was sealed away. Madras asks about the Scarlet King, but Anut brushes her off. Don't ask me about Karak just yet, she says. Just the thought of him makes her scars ache. So Madras shifts focus and asks about the world around them. Anut explains that this place was once a nursery, a place she created for her children to grow and learn. She apologizes if the shadows gave the team trouble. They don't have wills of their own anymore. Madras asks about those shadow creatures, and Anut sighs. She says her husband grew paranoid when she taught the shadows magic. To keep them from healing, he broke their bodies and stole their shadows. Now they're her jailers. It's fitting, she says, because this whole world has become just a shadow of what it once was. Madras asks how she knows the world is dead. Anut explains that while she may be blind, she can still sense things. When this place was alive, the wind would sing through the spawning fields. Now there's only silence, a mausoleum, a tomb, nothing but dust. She says she's tired now. Talking after so long takes a toll. But this is just the beginning of her story. So Anut rests, and the next interview doesn't happen until some time later. When Madras returns, Anut seems more willing to talk about her husband, the Scarlet King himself. Madras begins cautiously asking if she can describe his nature. That question hangs in the air for a moment, a long moment. Then Anut finally speaks. She says Kahrak, the Scarlet King, is essentially a frightened, angry child. That's it, a being born into a universe that only ever caused him pain. And like a child, instead of adapting to the world or trying to make it better, he lashes out. His answer to pain is destruction. He doesn't want to fix anything. He wants it all to go away. He wants the peace of non-existence. But here's the contradiction. He's also terrified of death. To avoid dying, he's done the impossible. He drank from the fountains of eternal life. He erased his name from the death tablets. He even melted down the wings of angels and drove the gold into his own flesh. Immortality at any cost. But Anut makes one thing clear. It's all a delay tactic. Everything ends, even him. Madras seems stunned by how straightforward this is. She tells Anut it's insightful, but it's not what she meant. She wants to know not just who the Scarlet King is, but what he is. That's when Anut throws a curveball. She asks Madras, "What do you think the Shormosh Erdal is?" That's a name tied to the king in a lot of obscure SCP lore. Madras answers with the Foundation's best theory. The Scarlet King is the embodiment of ancient chaos, resisting the rise of order and modernity, the eternal clash of the old world against the new. Anut chuckles. She says that theory is amusing, but maybe a little self-centered, as if the Foundation thinks everything in the universe revolves around them. The Shormosh Erdal, she says, is much bigger. It touches every world, not just theirs. Then she flips the whole theory on its head. Maybe the Foundation is wrong, she suggests. Not about the Scarlet King being a force of chaos, but about how they've framed it. They think Karak is the shadow cast by the fire of this great cosmic conflict. But what if it's the other way around? What if he is the fire, and the war is the shadow? Madras presses her. Does Anut mean that the concepts of modernity and ancient chaos come from the king? Anut doesn't say yes. She just tells Madras it's a thought exercise and ends the conversation. Her scars ache again, she says. She needs rest. More time passes, and another interview begins. This time, Madras asks Anut something very specific. How did the Scarlet King make himself immortal? What methods did he use? And Anut, instead of giving a straight answer, offers a story. She says it was a tale her mother used to tell her, a story about a girl made of glass. The girl lived in a little house by a river. She was fragile. So fragile, even the wind could cut her skin. A harsh word could leave bruises that lasted for weeks. Always sick, always hurt, always bedridden. But she had all the time in the world to read. And read she did. She devoured every book she could find. Math, magic, biology, theology, nothing was out of reach. Soon she knew everything, or almost everything. But there was one thing. She couldn't reach a giant ash tree on the far side of the river. That tree was legendary. Its roots stretched across the world, reaching every land, every kingdom. People came from all over just to sit in its shade. Her father, however, hated that tree. He hated everything it represented, and every day he tried to destroy it. But he couldn't. The river's current was too strong, the gates too thorny, the garden too well guarded. No matter what he did, he always failed. One day while her father was busy and her sisters were out playing, the girl decided to try herself. She thought, I know boats, I know plants, I know psychology, I can do this. So she built a raft and set off. And miraculously, it worked. The river didn't fight her. The gates opened. The garden welcomed her. She made it all the way to the tree. And that's when a snake appeared. It slithered out of the roots and said, Welcome to my tree. The girl was confused. How can a snake own a tree? She asked. I was here first, said the snake, before the first men walked upright. That doesn't make sense, she argued. No snake lives that long. It doesn't make sense, does it? The snake replied. You must be clever. I am, said the girl, cleverest of all my sisters. Would you like to live here? The snake asked. Here you'll never be harmed again. Here you'll be loved. Here you'll never be touched by a man. Something in her chest twisted something deep and painful, but she ignored it. I belong to my house. I belong to my father. I'm here to burn this place down. There is always a choice, the snake whispered. But she couldn't handle that. She ran back across the garden, through the gates, onto her raft, and only once she reached the other shore did she look back. Madras asks if that story is true. Anut smiles and says, Of course it is. Didn't your mother ever tell you that all stories are true? Later, during another interview, Anut seems hesitant to speak about her husband again. So Madras changes the subject. She asks about Anut's sisters. There's a long silence, 2 full minutes. Then Anut finally says, There were always supposed to be 7 of us. She explains that 7 is a number of power known even in ancient times. But personally, she prefers magic in 3s. It's more flexible, more adaptable. Still, she's the 5th bride, so 5 has always been an option too. Madras asks if she and her sisters were created with a purpose. Yes, Anut replies. Kahrak can only destroy. He can't create. That's why he needed us, his brides. That's why he needed Sana, our mother. When Madras asks if the Scarlet King still needs them, Anut gives an unexpected answer. She talks about her youngest sister, the weakest of them all, soft-hearted, shy, not particularly brave. But according to Anut, that sister did something none of the others dared to do. She tried to leave. And that in Anut's eyes made her the bravest of them all. All right, let's keep going. At this point in the interviews, the vibe starts shifting. Madras isn't just collecting information anymore. She's trying to connect dots. Something isn't sitting right with her. So in the next session, she asks Anut a big one. How does the Scarlet King spread his influence across different universes? Anut answers with something that sounds more like a parable than a briefing. She says there are 2 ways to understand his power. The first is about what he is. The Scarlet King, she says, is like water. He fills whatever space he's given. He takes shape from the container he enters. He doesn't create, he consumes. He seeps into forgotten histories, twists truths, makes lies into reality. He doesn't force obedience, he draws people in. Through their own rage, their grief, their need for meaning. He finds open doors and flows through them. This ties into other SCP entries, specifically CP-140 and SCP-6140, both of which deal with the Scarlet King manipulating forgotten civilizations and altered timelines to spread his influence. Anot basically says he rides the waves of chaos and despair, and that chaos becomes his gospel. Art, songs, stories, prophecy. He lets others do the work for him. But then she offers something else. Another story. She begins, "Once there was a brass princess who lived in a terrible kingdom by the sea. Now, unlike the Girl of Glass story, this one has more weight, more intent. You can feel it in the rhythm of Anot's words. The story goes like this. The brass princess wasn't human. She was metal constructed. The kingdom she lived in was ruled by a war-hungry king, a man so violent and hated that no woman would marry him, not by force, not by bribe, not even by fear. So he had his greatest engineer build 7 wives from metal, 1 of gold, 1 silver, 1 bronze, iron, brass, steel, and the last one, a patchwork bride made of leftover scraps. One day, a man with no name came to visit the king, pale, thin, power leaking off him like radiation. The king feared nothing but this man. He feared him deeply. The meeting was short, just threats and stares, but it changed something. The king felt fear, real fear, and fear in a man like him turns into paranoia. The Golden Queen noticed it first. She asked what troubled him. The king mumbled about dangers. He couldn't see threats. He couldn't destroy. She told him he had nothing to worry about. He had his brides, didn't he? His weapons, his army. He agreed, but he didn't believe it. Later that night, the queen gathered her sisters. She warned them, he's afraid. And when men like him feel fear, they lash out. He's going to kill us. Some of the brides scoffed. Others were already worried. The steel bride, usually silent, confirmed it. She'd seen him in the forge, putting on the same rust-colored armor he wore when he killed their creator. The iron bride wanted to fight. The silver bride said it was too late for that. If they resisted, he'd wipe them out. They needed a better plan. That's when the brass bride spoke. She said they should convince the king to imprison them. Yes, imprison. She'd explain it like this: by sealing away his wives, the king would also be sealing himself, creating a kind of magical lock, a symbolic gesture that cuts him off from all realities. After all, magic is about implication. A lock implies a key. A closed door implies an opening.
And if there's a key, someone someday will use it.
The other brides were horrified, especially the scrap metal bride. She called the brass bride a traitor, said she was feeding the king's paranoia just to save her own skin. The brass bride didn't deny it. To save the world, she said, we must first save ourselves. In the end, the king did as she suggested. He locked each bride away in a prison of his own design. The gold bride was caged and gifted to an ally. The silver bride was cast into a shattered sea. The bronze bride was sold to the demons of the deepest hell. The iron bride was thrown into a burning star that fed on her agony. The steel bride was banished to a place with no name. The scrap bride, he kept her close, locked in his palace where he could watch her every move. And the brass bride, cleverest of them all, was sent to a forgotten junkyard where knowledge meant nothing, and even the wind forgot to whisper. But the king knew her mind was dangerous, so before sealing her, he broke her in the worst way. He reached into her head and ground her thoughts into powder. And that was the end of the story. Back in the interview room, Madras sits in silence, stunned. She asks Anot why she chooses to answer some questions directly and others through stories. Anot replies with several possibilities. Maybe stories are the only way she's allowed to speak. Maybe some truths can only be told through metaphor. Maybe she's just grown old and strange in her isolation. Or maybe she says with a soft smile she just likes watching Madras struggle to understand. Then Madras asks something a little more personal. Was that last story also from her mother? Anut grows quiet. She says she never knew her mother. She died before Anut was born. The tone of everything starts to shift here. Madras can feel it. So during the next session, she brings up something that's been bothering her. She says it flat out, this doesn't add up. Anut acts confused, but Madras doesn't let it go. I've dealt with gods before, she says. You haven't threatened me. You haven't promised me anything. You haven't even asked to be freed. That's what's bothering her. A god who doesn't beg, threaten, or lie, that's suspicious. Anut just chuckles. She's surprised that Madras is being allowed to speak to her like this. But Madras sets the record straight. She's in charge of these interviews. She speaks how she wants. And she's not buying Anut's act anymore. You're giving us stories, direct answers. You're making it easy, too easy. And I think I know why, Madras says. You're planning something. Anut's eyes glitter with amusement. She doesn't deny it. Instead, she offers a challenge, a game. She'll tell Madras one last story. If Madras can figure out the hidden meaning, Anut will tell her the truth, everything she's really been planning. If not, then the interviews are over, forever. No more words, no more answers. She'll lie in silence until the end of time. Madras hesitates. How do I know you'll keep your word? Anut leans forward. You know what I am. You know what kind of creature I am. I don't break oaths. And that's where things start to spiral fast. The story she tells next might be the most dangerous one of all. So here it is, the final story, Anut's last tale. And even before she starts, you can feel the weight of it. The air's heavy, like something ancient is about to wake up. She begins. Once there was a haze of disconnected thoughts that floated in an unceasing abyss. Right away, you can tell this one's different. No girl, no kingdom, no metal or glass. Just a thing. A drifting awareness, not a person, not even really alive in the way we understand it. This haze had no name, no sense of self. It couldn't distinguish between I and you. It was raw perception, feeling everything and understanding nothing. No past, no future, just an eternal now, steeped in confusion and pain. It dreamed fevered nightmares. It watched galaxies collapse and empires turn to ash. Oceans rose and drained. Stars burned out and were born again. And through it all, it wept not because it knew what sorrow was, but because there was no escape. Everything was ending, always ending. And then came the voices. A sister who said, there is no such thing as an ending. A father who said, don't cry. I'll give you a reason to cry. A mother who whispered, hold on. And then finally, a dream. The haze dreamt of the girl made of glass, of the snake at the tree, of the moment she had a choice. There is always a choice, said the world. And the haze remembered. She remembered who she was. The story ends. Madras doesn't speak right away. She's still reeling from the implications. And then she realizes something. These stories. They weren't just stories. They were spells. Carefully layered invocations, crafted word by word. She recalls Anut's earlier warning how stories are like magic, shaped by symbol, guided by emotion. In that moment, she understands. Anut's been casting a ritual this whole time. Each tale was a part of the incantation. The number 3, symbolically powerful, especially in Anut's own personal brand of magic. The first story about knowledge and denial. The second about betrayal and imprisonment. And now this one about awakening. 3 stories. 3 keys. 3 parts of a door. Madras bolts upright and immediately radios sight command. She yells into the mic. Detonate the warhead now. This is Code Nightmare. Regent Red, 6462, is about to breach containment. Anut just smiles. She's completely calm. She says they're too late. We left nearly a minute ago. And just like that, the file ends. But then something strange happens. The document doesn't stop. It switches. The tone shifts. The formatting, too. Now we're reading prose, a narrative. And it's not written like a report anymore. It reads like fiction, like we've been dropped into someone's mind. Madras is sitting in a plush chair in an impossibly vast reading room. Shelves stretch up like skyscrapers. Soft voices echo through distant aisles. She isn't surprised to be here. She's calm in that dreamlike way where things don't seem quite real. And across from her sits someone else, a hooded figure wrapped in red. From beneath the robe, insect-like limbs poke out jointed, gleaming. The figure's head is similarly inhuman, but their posture, their movements, they're old, tired, not threatening, but deeply unsettling, like something that's been alive too long and knows too much. Anut. She winks at Madras, and Madras feels it, a cold fear flooding her chest. It's not terror exactly, more like dread laced with awe. She knows on a primal level that Anut could kill her with a thought. No flash, no bang, just gone, like erasing chalk from a board. She imagines claws reaching into her chest, curling around her heart. A gentle squeeze, and it'd pop like a grape. She doesn't say anything out loud, but Anut nods. Yes, she knows. Then Madras mentions the bomb, the Surtur-class warhead. Anut tilts her head and lifts her hand. Another pair of arms slips from her robes, more human in shape. And sitting in her palm, the warhead, or at least what's left of it, a small sphere of glass bound in metal. Inside, a murky yellow liquid swirls around something indistinct, something that should not be in anyone's hands, let alone hers. Madras had never seen it in person. She didn't have the clearance, but she knows exactly what it is. Anut holds it up to the light, says she's impressed by the Foundation. Even for her, getting her hands on this would have been difficult. Madras calls it Foundation property, and then immediately regrets it. Anut barks out a laugh, not angry, more like amused that Madras still thinks anything belongs to the Foundation anymore. She says something chilling. I suspect your Foundation sees me the same way as property. And with that, she closes her hand. When she opens it, the warhead is gone. Behind her, something bizarre happens. A group of sapient mice are holding a debate with a floating energy vortex, wearing a turtleneck sweater. They're arguing about the merits of Maya Angelou's writing style. Yeah, Madras realizes she's in the Wanderer's Library, a place she's only read about, a mythical hub of knowledge that connects universes. She used to dream about it. Now it feels more like a nightmare. She tells Anut they played right into her hands, that the moment they decided to talk to her, they lost. Anut doesn't deny it. She simply says she wants to give Madras a gift for her service, a parting token, some information, a warning. Her sisters, she says, are resourceful. If Anut has escaped, it's very likely the others are not far behind. Maybe some already have. Maybe some are escaping right now. And most of them, not nearly as polite as she is. She taps her claw on the armrest. Space begins folding in on itself, forming fractals, geometric jaws, closing slowly around her. Madras, almost on reflex, blurts out, "What happens to the girl in your story? Where does she go?" The fractals pause. The air tightens. For a breathless second, everything holds. Anut's face flickers with something, a shadow of emotion. Not joy, not sorrow, just a shape in the dark. She goes home, Anut says. The girl finally goes home. And then she's gone. Just like that. The story ends, but it doesn't feel like closure. It feels like a door left ajar, like something's still watching. And yeah, what follows in the file is just a summary, but it spells out what we've all pieced together. The Foundation found one of the Scarlet King's brides, Anut, locked away in a reality that was nearly impossible to locate. Instead of leaving her there forever, they decided to poke the bear. They thought they could get useful info, that it'd be worth the risk. But Anut wasn't sitting idly in that casket. She was waiting. And through stories, 3 of them no less, she performed a ritual, one that let her escape. She warned them. She told them what stories could do, how magic works through symbols and implication, how 3 was her number. But no one listened. And now, she's out. So now that Anut is free, we're left asking the obvious question, what now? This wasn't just some minor breach. This wasn't your typical anomalous containment failure. This was the release of one of the Scarlet King's most dangerous brides, a being who doesn't just understand magic but speaks it fluently through story, symbolism, implication. A being who manipulates reality not with force but with narrative structure. She didn't claw her way out. She wrote her way out. And if Ainut is out, then the other brides may not be far behind. That warning she gave Madras in the Wanderer's library, that wasn't just a casual comment. That was foreshadowing, one of the most ancient narrative devices in the book. And Ainut understands narrative the way a composer understands music. Every beat is deliberate, every word a spell. But let's not forget what 0511 said at the start of this whole mess: this world will die in the dark so that all worlds may live in the light. Was that just poetic fatalism? Or did they know exactly how bad this could get? Because if there's one thing the Scarlet King mythos has taught us, it's this. His brides aren't just victims. They're weapons. Sealed away, yes. Imprisoned, absolutely. But they were created with purpose. And that purpose, if you believe Ainut, was to balance out what Kahrak could not do himself. He could destroy, but he could not create. So he married creation. 7 forms of it. 7 daughters of potential and power. And now that one is free. It's only a matter of time. Now let's backtrack a second. Let's talk about how the Foundation let this happen. And I don't mean just operationally, I mean psychologically. Because Ainut didn't just manipulate systems, she manipulated people. Starting with Dr. Anvi Madras. Madras was good, smart, a professional, but Ainut knew something critical about her, something a lot of us can probably relate to: curiosity, the need to understand, the need to ask one more question, even when every instinct tells you to walk away. And Ainut fed that curiosity in the gentlest, most seductive way possible. She didn't threaten. She told stories. She crafted vivid, heartbreaking parables, fables filled with grief, with pain, with longing. Each one felt like it had a moral, a truth hidden beneath the words. And they did, but they also had something else: power, meaning, magic. Madras didn't see it until it was too late. Neither did the O5 Council. They were looking for actionable intel, something they could weaponize against the Scarlet King. They got played. All of them. They weren't listening to a prisoner. They were sitting at the feet of a sorceress who wrote herself a key and walked out the front door. Let's revisit the final few moments of the encounter, because this is where the horror really hits. When Ainut disappears, she doesn't explode or vanish in some dramatic show of light and noise. She folds herself out of the world. That's how stories end, right? They close the book, fade to black, curtain falls. But stories don't stay closed forever. They get retold. And the worst part, the Foundation doesn't even get the satisfaction of vengeance. They don't detonate the warhead in time. They don't stop her escape. She's not raging through hallways or causing destruction. She's elsewhere, somewhere vast, mystical, and mythic. The Wanderer's Library. And here's a little tidbit for anyone unfamiliar with the Wanderer's Library. It's not controlled by the Foundation. It exists outside of their jurisdiction. It's run by the Serpent's Hand, a group that sees anomalies not as threats, but as wonders. That place is sacred to them and to many other entities across the multiverse. If Ainut made it there, she didn't just escape containment. She joined the narrative multiverse. She became part of the great story. And now the question becomes, what kind of story does she plan to write? Madras never comes back, at least not in the file. There's no rescue, no report, no closure. All we get is her last interaction, her final realization, and then silence. That's classic SCP. The horror isn't loud. It's slow creeping and existential. You might be wondering what happens next. How does the Foundation respond? That part's not in the document, which is kind of the point. SCP-6462 is an anomaly that blurs the line between myth and weapon, between containment breach and literary structure. It's not just about Ainut escaping. It's about how she did it. She used the Foundation's own arrogance, their hunger for knowledge, against them. She gave them what they wanted, just enough truth to be dangerous, wrapped in layers of metaphor, magic, and misdirection. And they walked straight into it. Remember when Anot said a story could be anything? A chain, a key, an open door. Well, here's what that really means. The Foundation thought they were building a narrative. They thought they were in control of the story. But they weren't the authors. They were the audience. And when you're the audience, the only power you have is to listen. Let's take a second to reflect on that idea. What if every SCP file that seems too abstract, too philosophical, too strange, isn't just weird for weirdness' sake? What if it's telling us something? What if it's laying down breadcrumbs, little pieces of a puzzle we're too distracted to see? SCP-6462 doesn't just break the fourth wall. It doesn't even believe in the wall. It redefines containment not as walls or locks or chains, but as belief, as narrative control. And once that control slips, once the story starts telling itself, all bets are off. This is why the Scarlet King and his brides remain some of the most dangerous elements in the SCP universe. Not because they're monsters in the traditional sense, but because they operate on a completely different level. They aren't just part of the story. They are the story. And now that one of them has taken the pen, the next chapter is already being written. So here we are, the final chapter. And honestly, there's something eerie about how quiet the end of this document is. You'd expect alarms, explosions, chaos, but that's not what we get. There's no big showdown, no dramatic attempt to recapture Anot, no frantic last-minute plan. There's just silence, like the moment after you finish a story and close the book, only to realize something's still watching you from the page. Because here's the thing, Anot didn't just escape. She rewrote her role in the Foundation's narrative. And worse, she made them help her do it. Every interview, every log, every transcription, every retelling, it was all part of a larger spell. And now we're part of it too. Think about it. You listened. You followed. You visualized the stories. You imagined the girl of glass, the brass princess, the drifting haze of thought that found herself again. That's all it takes. Because that's how magic like hers works. Not through force, through attention, through belief, through storytelling. And now the story has spread. It's on file. It's been read, shared, analyzed. Anot's words are out there echoing through minds like seeds. And in the SCP universe, belief is more than powerful. It's world-shaping. This wasn't just a containment breach. It was an idea breach. One that can't be stopped with bullets or amnestics or warheads. One that spreads through language, through metaphor, through meaning. And now let's talk about the Foundation one last time. Because for all their flaws, and they are flawed, they tried. They genuinely believed that they could control this, that they could outthink something ancient, mythic, and infinitely patient. But they underestimated the power of narrative. They thought of themselves as the protagonists, the heroes, the ones who write the ending. But this wasn't their story. It was Anot's, and she told it beautifully. Here's a detail that gets missed sometimes. Anot didn't lie, not once. She didn't deceive through falsehood. She deceived through framing. She told the truth in ways no one could understand until it was too late. Because that's the most dangerous kind of truth, the kind that waits, the kind that slips past your defenses by looking like fiction. And the Foundation. They were so sure they were in control, that their rules, their logic, their science could contain anything. But you can't contain a story, not one that doesn't want to end. The final file ends with Madras lost in the Wanderer's library. It doesn't say if she escapes. It doesn't say if she ever makes contact again. But we know one thing, she saw Anot's true face, and she saw the price of curiosity, the price of letting a story unfold unchecked. There's one final quote from Anot that sticks with you. Right before she left, she told Madras, "Storytelling is the only thing left to me, but it's enough." And it was. She turned storytelling into sorcery, myth into map, emotion into energy. She made the story real. And in the end, what more is there to say? SCP-6462, the implicit door. It's not just a door between places. It's a door between realities, a door between belief and truth, a door between fiction and action. And now that it's open, it may never close again. So if you've made it this far, if you've followed Anut's tale all the way to the end, then congratulations. You've heard the story. But ask yourself one question before you move on. What if you're not just the audience anymore? What if the story is watching you back?